So knowing that, and if you're following those generation schedules, that's a big deal this time of the year. Really, any system you fish. Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage and the channel. We are here for July and the technique of the month video. And this one is, I was kind of struggling, to be honest, to come up with the name of what to call this technique. The best I could do was follow the flow, and so following current in your body of water. Now I understand some places may not have current as to what we talk about a lot. I'm thinking of the places where I live, places where I fish a lot, which are reservoirs. So it's got a dam, it's got a river that comes in on the upper end. Water goes out through the dam, it flows that direction. That's kind of generally what I'm thinking when I say that, but I also realize that there are natural lakes. There's a lot of different bodies of water, and current is created in a lot of different ways. In a natural lake, most of the current that's going to be generated is actually from wind. You may have some inlets and outlets and that kind of stuff that have a little bit of current around them, but for the most part, any significant current you're going to get is actually wind generated. But any of that current is definitely a drawing factor to those bass once you get to the summertime, like it is in July. Usually the water's a little bit cooler, but if nothing else, it's at least more oxygenated, and those fish will kind of seek that out, as well as it making an easier place for them to ambush bait fish. So that's a big part of why I'm looking for current in the summertime, is just those factors that those bass are going to be keyed in on. So for this one, and kind of again thinking regionally, where I live, this part of the country, following the flow. What do I mean by that? Here's kind of what I'm talking about. Our lakes, they generate a lot of power through them this time of the year. A lot of time that's going to happen, anywhere from mid-morning through the afternoon, especially into the evening hours, is when they're going to be generating power through those dams at the greatest rates. So the main body of the lake, kind of the main river channel or something, is that current's going to be really moving, in the afternoon, say 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time in the evening. That's when they're going to start moving current. That's when those fish are going to feed. Those fish will get very accustomed to that pattern, and they'll know, man, I'm not going to do a whole lot the rest of the day, to be quite honest. They'll just kind of float around, they'll suspend up off of those ledges or off of those points or whatever, and they're not going to be set up where you can catch them. Period, for the most part. You may pick one off here and one off there, but they're not going to be where you can really pull up and really catch a lot of those fish really quick, because they're just not set up to feed. They get very accustomed, they get set to that time. They know that some point in time in the afternoon they're going to start moving some water, and that's going to be their clue as to when to feed, because they don't have to feed all day long, even though it is summertime and their metabolism is fairly high. They're going to really take advantage of it when they need to. So knowing that, and if you're following those generation schedules, that's a big deal this time of the year. Really, any system you fish, you need to know when they're going to be pulling water, if there's any way to find that out ahead of time. Our TVA lakes, it's super easy. The TVA app makes that really, really easy to do. Just scroll on there, click on the lake, you can get the projected, typically for that day. Late enough in the evening, you'll get it for the next day. If I'm going out fishing and I see that on Fort Loudon Lake, they're going to start generating, at 11 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to generate the rest of the afternoon, I'm not going to spend much of my time from daylight until, honestly, 11, but maybe even 12 or 1 o'clock, until that water really gets to moving good. I'm not going to spend much of my day on the main river channel. I may hit a place or two here or there just briefly to test it. I'm going to spend the bulk of my time in those creek arms. Why is that? Because those fish in those creek arms, they're not getting accustomed to that water moving in the afternoons and really basing their feeding schedule around that. They're in those creeks, that water doesn't move a whole lot anyway. So those fish in those places, they're just kind of doing their thing. They're going to feed on, whenever they feel like feeding. So you're able to go into those places and actually getting away from the current that's going to happen a little bit later in the afternoon, and fishing for fish that are just not affected by it. So that's kind of part of it. And then, other systems, It may be where they generated water in the afternoon on the day before that it's so far up the lake, and this actually happens on Douglas as well as Cherokee some. They'll generate water in the afternoon 20 miles up the lake. It's actually the next morning before that water really gets to that point in the lake, from what I've seen in my experience. I can't prove that completely, to be honest, but I've just been in some of those places, and it's like it really was the next day before it actually affected, 20 miles up the lake or something. And those fish fed because of it pretty early in the morning, and then they quit. So you really got to become very knowledgeable about your own body of water to know, hey, they turn the water on at this time, it's going to affect this part of the lake, in about this much time or whatsoever. So that's a deal that just takes a lot of time to learn. But Tennessee River, Coosa River, those places that have a dam on the upper end, dam on the lower end, once they start pushing water through those, it generally sets up pretty quick. So how do you apply all that? Okay, so now hey, on your lake, they're not going to move any water till up in the morning. You're going to go to the creeks. What are you going to do? A lot of the same stuff you would do anyway in July. A deep crankbait. If there's some ledges, there's some points, there's some humps, there's stuff out in those places offshore for those fish to get. A deep crankbait is my go-to. A DT16, that Caribbean shad color, that is my single favorite deep crankbait, to throw out there on those places in the summertime. If it's more of a shallow water deal, or kind of getting towards some current of any kind, if some of those creeks have some decent little places that run in the back of them, some little creeks that feed into them, those are a couple other baits that I'm going to use in there, to really target those fish. A storm cover pop, fishing up shallow around any type of visible cover, as well as throwing into some little shady pockets and over laydowns and different stuff. That little dude's going to work good. And then if there's any flats that's got some isolated wood, especially out away from the bank, for whatever reason, that's where that drop shot really seems to be most effective for me when I'm fishing up shallow. I love to pitch that thing around, some shallow laydowns and that kind of stuff. Man, a root ball facing into the current in the back of a creek with a drop shot in July, that's almost a guarantee to catch a fish. Caught some really big ones that way at times too, but it's a great way to get a bite. But that drop shot's going to work for me shallow. It's going to work for me deep as well. But I really can't stress enough just how important it is for you to get out there on your body of water and really understand. Look at those generation charts and get a feel for how that water moves, just how long it takes to get, to generate current in a different part of the lake. Don't think that just because it says they're going to start letting water loose at 11 o'clock that at 11:01 you're going to see noticeable current. Just not really the way that it works. It takes it a little bit to get that water moving, to start start that current and start getting that process going. So following that flow, man, in the month of July, you can literally fish a place 9 o'clock in the morning and not get a bite. Go back 2 or 3 hours later when that water's moving, got those fish set up, and catch one every single cast. So don't give up on a place just because you're there at what could have been the wrong time of day.